He obviously enjoys drinking, don't you think? That's like an oral compulsive disorder with this guy.
He's been doing, which goes after teaching our kids and giving them an experience which will help transform their lives as it does.
The city's not going to be able to provide all of the funding, all of the needs, but the city certainly can provide leadership, both with, as Charlie mentioned, with the private sector as new development is occurring, but also with the county, the state, and others to find partnerships that work to create these affordable spaces.
All right, very much. Richard Lee.
Well, you know, in part, let me just say that my opinion of the arts is that to some extent all this civic involvement of the arts is just a way of making the politicians into celebrities and getting them away from the real things that we pay them for, like to have supervision over a police department so that, you know, we're not murdered in our own homes. I'd like to cede the remainder of my time to Mr. Nichols to answer the question, what is his responsibility as the chair of the Board of Public Health in supervising the activities of the King County Medical Examiner when obviously a scientific fraud has been perpetrated by their personnel? Mr. Nichols?
Go ahead and leave my mic off, please.
And that's the style of government that you'll get from Nichols, you know? He won't answer questions, and then he'll have security officers roughly put their hands on you to take you away. Oh, that's a very funny issue from a guy who's the proto-fascist for the 21st century here.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Marty here, Garrett.
You know, analyzing the problems we have in the African American community, I came up with a concept called the African Youth Enterprise.
Get easily from one place to another, which expands the land base where people can live or work or engage in artistic endeavors and still have reasonable access to other parts of the city and the region. So I would focus on those issues.
Thank you. Our next question. During the last... Oh, I'm sorry.
Works for Al Gore, right? A little bit of a candidate stare down, you know. Al Gore can do it, I can do it.
One of the first persons to speak at that housing conference was an artist, and I'll never forget it. Since that time, the city of Seattle worked in
Streets and police services and that sort of thing. But there's an old West Seattle saying that people do not live on bread alone. And the arts is part, I think, of a full education, a well-rounded education. King County has worked very hard with our cultural education program to try and bring the arts to schools, bring the arts to the smaller communities throughout King County. And I think there's a place for the city of Seattle to do that within our schools here in Seattle at a local level. Our kids deserve that opportunity. It's something they will remember for the rest of their lives. And I think it's something that our, unfortunately, basic education package doesn't cover today. And until it does, we're going to have to fill that gap.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lee.
Yes, I would like to use my time to ask Mayor Paul Schell what he thinks is the basis for reopening old homicide cases. Mr. Schell, what is the standard of evidence that is required for reopening old homicide cases in your jurisdiction, sir?
I think you should ask.
I think you should ask our superintendent.
Mr. Sidron's office deals primarily with misdemeanors, Mr. Schell. You're an attorney, you know this. First-degree murder is a felony, sir, in your jurisdiction. So what is the standard of evidence that is required for this city government to reopen an old homicide case, Mr. Schell? No smart aleck answers, please. Pass the buck. Pass the buck to the guy who handles the misdemeanor cases, who's leaving office in a couple of months.
Schools began in 1969 at Franklin High School for 10 years. My last year, in 1978, I taught at all private girls' high school, Immaculate High School. And as a teacher, I realized that
think you should ask Mr. Sidran that. Who is he kidding? Mr. Sidran having authority over the chief of police? No one's ever uttered those sorts of words before. Everybody knows that Mr. Sidran is not involved in felony cases.
That I've designed where we educate our young people around building a house, which is one of the most important assets they're going to have, around raising their own food, and around designing the transportation system. And you'll be surprised how we will keep the interests of our young people in education when it's career-based education. When I say career-based education,
in more creative ways, and I think there are risks when we don't do that.
See, I'm being fair. I threw it up at Shell, I threw it up at Nichols.
I think the city
Journalistic
can
fairness.
do more to partner with public schools, including through our park.
Sidran's role is more minor in this.
Both in conjunction with the schools and also the before-school and after-school programs. I think one of Mayoral Rice's legacies of the county education
at the Seattle Center, which will have an arts focus. And there's many things the private sector can do and many that the private institutions can do, like Living History, which into Montpelier took around to the schools and enriched the lives and asked the questions of the kids while they were studying in school. I think this is a big gap in terms of teaching our children.
He's in the zone. He's just reading his rehearsed statements.
In this community, even in tough times, if we take the random acts of kindness that are out there.
No unwelcome incursion by reality will slow the hollow line. Mr. Shell.
Thank you. I think as
he's on autopilot.
I'm starting to feel a general theme of each candidate arising.
Was offensive to them and their constituents. Mr. Lee.
On April 6th of this year, I received a letter from R. Gilbert Helikowski, the chief of police, in which he said that he sees no basis for revisiting this tragic event in the future. And here at this theater, I'd like to ask Mr. Shell if the idea of a homicide being a tragedy is somehow a prerequisite against reopening a homicide case in which the evidence has gathered over the last 7 years, persuasively demonstrating a conspiracy to commit murder of Kurt Cobain. Mr. Shell?
Well, Mr. Lee, don't you want to answer this question? If you're a candidate for mayor, don't you seriously want to address this question?
I'm as serious as I can possibly be. My answer to you, thank you. My answer to you, Lori, is that there are more serious things going on in the city of Seattle than your infotainment-based news organization is willing to acknowledge, Ms. Matsukawa.
Thank you.
Fairness, Mr. Shell?
Laurie, would you repeat the question?
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
Fairness.
The question is, the mayor of New York City has become embroiled.
I'm going to get it over as quickly as possible.
As mayor of Seattle, how would you respond if a religious, political, or other group complained to you that performances or work of art funded by the Seattle Arts Commission was offensive to them and their constituents?
well, first of all,
Infotainment-based reporting.
our city attorney is another Giuliani. Mayor Giuliani, with his reputation, putting organized crime figures in the jail, not hobnobbing, but accepting money from organized crime figures, and harassing people sitting on the sides and not walking and peeing in the park.
Well, I don't often agree with Mr. Garrett, but on his last comment, I do agree. As the one candidate who is from time to time compared with Rudy Giuliani, I would just say that first I think better legs, and secondly, my personal life is more intact.
Sidran just agreed with the guy that whacked Shell, allegedly. By the way, I spoke to him a few weeks ago. He doesn't deny it. He denies the megaphone part of it, but not the socking in the eye part of it. At least he hasn't yet, not to me, or anyone else that I know. So Sidran is backing up the guy that punched Shell? Whoa.
Expression that was an issue that they would have to take up with the court.
Mr. Chong.
I would remind the groups.
And who the hell are you?
That their freedom.
Oh, well, blimey, man. The usher is telling me to remain seated.
The same as those of the artists.
Piss on you, buddy.
Also protected by civil rights by law.
Take your feet off the seat, man.
If we are to
Silence yourself. Don't discuss politics in the way that you want. I'm an usher, buddy. I've got friggin' authority here.
Thank you.
Tonight we are engaging, I think, in an exercise of free speech. I may not agree with the things that my fellow candidate to my right is saying. In fact, I haven't found one yet. But I honor his right to speak. And
but you don't respond, sir. You don't respond to the issues,
and I would
sir.
hope you would respect my right to speak as well. It seems to me that in a democratic society, we have to have that ethic. We have to respect each other's right to speak. We have to respect another person's right to disagree with us. And artistic expression is an extension of the right to free speech. And in this city, I think that is a very, very dear value that we hold, and one that we would not expect our mayor, our city council, or our arts commission to infringe upon.
But if he disagrees with what you're saying, he'll have the police cart you away even in a public hearing at the city council. He'll have armed men cart you away. Mr. Free Speech here.
On my far right, answer the first part of the question, and then the candidates on this side answer the second part. They start from the same premise. In 1973, the City of Seattle enacted its bold and pioneering 1% for the Arts program, which put Seattle on the map as an innovative arts leader. As a result, public art programs, including paintings, sculptures, murals, and mosaics, are displayed in public spaces, buildings, and many neighborhoods. The question for the table at the far right, and we're starting with Mr. Amari to hear
the humanizing of that kind of facility, and I think that would be a very worthwhile thing for us to look at expanding, particularly if our good neighbors to the south in Federal Way have been willing to see it and it's working. I think Seattle can probably afford it as well.
All right, thank you. Mr. Lee?
Public officials have hundreds of ways in their playbook to dodge the issues that are most pressing. As I said before, the number one thing that people want from the government and have always wanted from the government is safety from gangsterism. So I'd like to ask Mr. Nichols to address the question, when does it become the concern of the chair of the Board of Public Health when the King County Medical Examiner commits scientific fraud in a case like the Kurt Cobain case very publicly by publishing an article in the Journal of Forensic Sciences which perpetrates a scientific fraud that people can shoot themselves in the mouth with a shotgun without suffering exit wounds? When does that become your concern, Mr. Nichols?
Well, unless it was done with 1% for art, not right now, Richard. Thank you.
Oh, not right now. And here I am testifying before his board more than a year ago. Here's a letter to Mr. Nichols of more than a year ago. I've been waiting more than a year for a response, Mr. Nichols. When is it that you're going to get around to responding, Mr. Nichols? Obviously never.
Your minute is over. Thank you.
An irresponsible public official.
This is the second half of the question regarding to
total irresponsibility.
In recent years, the city has become more involved in public-private partnerships. Projects such as the Civic Place
Dinero Manana. We'll get around to it when we get around to it, man.
1% of the city's money for art.
Yeah.
The private portion of the project is exempt. Do you believe the city should require private partners to meet the 1%ers to participate? Mr. Shaw.
I'm sure Greg will sit down with us at length after this thing is over and devote as much of his time to the issue as is absolutely necessary to find out the facts, find out what he should do as the chair of the Board of Public Health, find out what his responsibilities are in this case and what he can do to set things right. Right? That's what we can expect, right?
I think in these partnerships it's always possible to negotiate. It depends on the particular public-private partnership, but art should be integrated into any project that has the use of public dollars. It enriches the project.
Thank you. Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. The short answer to your question is yes, absolutely. There's no reason why the private sector wouldn't actually want. I don't think that would stop them from building. And
Anyway.
the reason is because it's a good investment.
It's the last hour. I'm already a political legend, so.
And I'd be willing for the administration to cover an additional percentage.
I'm having a pretty good night.
5%. Hell, the thing is, not how high the percentage, because the money is there. The thing is freeing up the money. From my analysis,
And a few newspaper reporters are looking for an angle on this. In addition to me, didn't Sidran say that he agreed with something? On something with the guy that viciously attacked Shell, according to the Seattle police, according to dozens of the Seattle police? Didn't this guy viciously attack Shell?
And there's plenty of money there.
And didn't Sidran say he agreed with him on something?
Things like the mass transit system that the people are asking for.
A colorful night.
Housing. If we listen more to the people, we'll run this government a lot more efficiently.
There's more going on than just me here, man.
At least do.
Thank you. Mr. Chong.
The immediate answer is successful venues in current day at the music club, at many events at the Seattle Center. I do believe that it's the music of the youth that has made Seattle, put Seattle on the map, whether it's Pearl Jam, whether it's grunge. As many people hear about that as Microsoft.
Nirvana rules, man. Nirvana rules, Paul. Right on, man. Pearl Jam and Nirvana. Paul's doing his Nirvana pitch over. Can you believe that shit? Yeah, we should support this teen dance ordinance because, you know, Nirvana, man, it put our city on the map. Nirvana, man, and Pearl Jam and Nirvana and Nirvana. Wow.
Which holds dances and education events. The city of Kirkland spent over $1 million on a city-sponsored music facility for youth.
That guy just had the nads to bring up Kurt Cobain independently. Can you believe that shit?
Or do you have other ideas about
yeah, Kurt Cobain put Seattle on the map, so we should have teen dances and stuff. But as far as, you know, pursuing his murder.
And let's start with Mr. Sidran.
Well, of the competing priorities. In the broader context of the teen dance ordinance, I have to say that the fundamental responsibility of government and of society is to protect its children, and an ordinance that would allow children of any age to go to an adult nightclub, not necessarily to drink alcohol, but to be in an adult club until any hour, which was the proposed ordinance that was passed by the city council, is not something
I'm agreeing with Sidran. He's right. He's right. That was the proposed ordinance.
Thank you. I do think that as mayor, it will be my responsibility to help lead on this issue and not wait 18 months for negotiations to be completed, an ordinance passed, and then at the last minute veto. I think a mayor can lead.
Do you recall what I said a few moments ago about the principal responsibility of government is to protect the citizens against gangsterism. And the teen dance ordinance, as viewers of my television program will know, was propagated by